Hey everyone. So I'm not permanently back to YouTube, but I wanted to just stop by and create a video for Transgender Day of Visibility. I really wanted to say hey to everyone, to send my love, to send virtual hugs, and also to just talk a little bit about why this day that happens every March 31st is an important day for many trans and non-binary people. So I see Trans Day of Visibility as a sort of counterbalance to Trans Day of Remembrance. Obviously, both days are very important, but before Trans Day of Visibility, Trans Day of Remembrance was probably the only well known event for trans communities, at least well known probably within LGBTQ plus circles, if not more broadly. But this meant that trans communities had a day of mourning and a day of creating calls to action to address the disproportionately high rates of transphobic violence, but we didn't have a day to really celebrate the living, to recognize the living in our communities. Sure, you could say we had things like Pride Month, but I would argue until very recently, the T in the LGBT was often ignored by the rest of the community. Because of the overwhelming lack of positive representation, many people likely had ideas for creating an event like Trans Day of Visibility. Even Rachel Crandall, who is credited with creating the event that we are celebrating today, has said this herself that many people likely had this idea. She just happened to put it out there and organize it, and it kind of grew from there. We needed more positive visibility then, and we still need more now, but we have certainly come such a long way, even in just the past few years. So, visibility is a tricky, complicated thing to, put it lightly. And it obviously means different things to different people. Kind of starting with what it means for me, visibility and Trans Day visibility is about, this sense of positivity, this sense of positive representation, celebrating the beauty of trans people and trans communities around the world. I see it as for those of us that are trans or non binary, it's a day to really embrace the gender euphoria that you experience if you experience it. Embrace the things about yourself that give you an unbridled sense of joy related to just who you are and how you show up in the world. It's a day where trans and non binary people share stories to highlight the diversity of experiences and identities and transition pathways that people in our community take. It helps show that there is no one right way to transition or to be trans or to be non binary. We all have our own unique journeys to finding ourselves. So I think it's especially important to emphasize again that there is no one correct way to be trans, to be non binary, to undergo transition. It's about finding what fits for you. And that's why a diverse range of visibility and representation is important for so many people so people can find somebody out there who's like, oh my God, I didn't know there was anybody in the community that felt and identified the same way I do. But the world often paints us in a negative light. The world often focuses on suffering when they talk about us. And we absolutely have our share of struggles, with some of us struggling more than others, especially those of us that are most marginalized in an already marginalized group. Individuals like trans women of color that are even more marginalized than the rest of the trans and non binary communities. But we are so much more than our suffering. And that's why a day like Trans Day of Visibility can be so important to a lot of people. We have hopes, we have dreams, we want to be able to be ourselves in the world. We also want to just be able to do mundane things without fear of discrimination or violence, like simply just going to the bathroom. Things that the vast majority of cisgender people can often take for granted. And I would say this is definitely not too much to ask for. But I mentioned that visibility is a tricky and complicated thing. Being visible as a trans or non binary person, whether you intend to or not, can also bring attacks from hateful individuals and systems. There is a beauty to be able to be out and be proud, but there is also a risk that comes with that because we continue to live in a world that is often merely tolerant at best and outright violent at worst. We deserve a world where we can be not merely tolerated, not merely put up with, but accepted, affirmed, and truly included throughout all aspects of society. But until we get there, many trans and non binary people continue to experience discrimination, violence, and are even killed for simply being visible and for simply existing. And because of these sorts of reasons, I completely understand why many people are not visible, whether it's because you have not yet started transitioning at all, or maybe you have already gone through many transition processes and you live more stealth, or you're not very out at all about the fact that you're trans or non-binary except to maybe very few close people. On Trans Day of Visibility, it's important to recognize that not everyone can be visible and not everyone even wants to be visible. And there's nothing wrong with not wanting to be visible. It's an incredibly scary world in many ways, so I completely understand if you feel like you cannot or do not want to be visible. For some people, being trans, being non-binary, it might just be a part of who you are, and you don't really care to make much of a deal out of it. It's just like, a fact of life, and I move on. And that's obviously perfectly valid. Regardless of your situation, know that you're valid. Know that you're loved. Know that you're supported. Even if you're the only person who sees the full you, know that you are still completely 100% valid. Find whatever it is that you can to affirm your identity to yourself. And if you're not ready to come out to others, if you aren't ready to start transition, that is perfectly okay. Use days like today to remind yourself, even though that you may feel very alone, there are other people out there like you. There is a whole community of people out there like myself who are waiting to show you love and support. One last big thing I want to say here, and this is for the allies out there. This is for all you cisgender people out there who may be watching. Those of you that are looking to support the trans and non binary people in your life, we need more cisgender people to be visible. And you might be like, what? What do you mean by this? No, we don't need a cisgender visibility day. Don't worry, I'm not even remotely saying something like that. We need more allies to stand up for trans and non-binary people, to get involved in advocacy efforts, to write to their local representatives, to make a stand against all these horrible bills that just keep coming and coming and coming. We need cisgender people to learn about trans people and non-binary people, to learn about identities, terminology, ways to be an ally, and ways to correct mistakes. In case you don't know, simple way to go about it is correcting yourself, apologizing, moving on so you don't make a big deal about it, because if you do, you're making it about yourself. And that is a key point here even more broadly. Do not make allyship about yourself, because it's not about you. Actions speak louder than words. So you can say that you're an ally, but I would say trans and non-binary people have the final say. We will be the judge in terms of whether or not you're actually behaving like an ally. You can say whatever you want, but you have to be showing up and behaving as an ally to really truly be an ally for our community. But through this process, make sure you have grace and humility and be willing to be vulnerable and make mistakes. Use your privilege as a cisgender person to stand up for and uplift trans and non-binary people. To all of my cisgender allies out there, and to those of you that even just want to be allies and maybe aren't quite there yet and you're in a very early stage, consider this a call to action. In closing, I hope all of you find ways to celebrate Trans Day of Visibility, of course, if it's important to you, whether it's finding a local event or an online event, spending time with close friends, or even just spending time with your pet and reflecting on the beauty and complexity of this little thing we call gender. And below in the description, I'll also share some links to organizations that you can donate to, so please donate to causes that support trans and non-binary people, but only if you have the means to do so. Share in the comments what you plan to do for Trans Day of Visibility. What does TDOV mean to you? What thoughts and feelings come up for you on this day at this time of year? Where do you aspire to be in your journey by next year's TDOV? And what are your reactions to what I have shared here today? As always, let me know all of this and more down in the comments below. And as always, again, Tipsy and I love you all and hope you're staying safe and sound. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not permanently back to YouTube, so I don't know when my next video will be, but it did feel important today to share a video and to also just send my love to all of you. I also apologize for the lower quality on this video because I could not get my phone working and I kind of just wanted to put something together and not have to worry about the fuss of technology. But anyways, I digress. Happy TDOV, everyone. I love you all. Goodbye for now.